Hey there, it's Deanna Byrne. I want to talk in this video a little bit about sensory acuity, and this is also connected to my video that I did on limiting beliefs. So, sensory acuity is the art of seeing, hearing, feeling, physically and emotionally, smelling and tasting. Sensory acuity is a critical component of NLP and the QMM program. It helps us to gain feedback and valuable information that indicates the extent to which we are on or off target in achieving our own outcomes and goals. It also impacts other people's actions and reactions to certain situations and stimuli. Sensory acuity, in terms of NLP, is defined as the ability to observe, examine, and interpret those external cues received from other people. Sensory acuity helps us to train our minds to see and listen in a nonverbal communication that is happening, such as body language or eye movements, etc. And each of us unconsciously emits several external signals, and these external signals are actually a reflection of our own internal mind and thought processes. With an increased level of sensory acuity, we are better able to catch these subtle signals and, as a result, read them more efficiently. Since there are many signals that can be emitted via this nonverbal channel of communication, it is important that we master sensory acuity skills in order to communicate more effectively. If we develop these skills, we can interpret the quality of the incoming signals and use this newfound information to respond more effectively. A complete NLP picture of communication is formed when we combine the verbal language used actually by the speaker with the non-verbal cues that are emitted. So there's a great deal that we can learn about someone from simply their non-verbal cues that they emit, such as their, hidden frustrations in accordance to words that are being said to them, as an example. By understanding and implementing these unique levels of communication, mainly at the unconscious level, we can then build a stronger rapport with others. And sensory acuity also helps us gain insight when it comes to the level of depth and quality of the rapport that we have with someone, helping us actually gauge the sincerity of the speaker. So, developing sensory acuity skills does take time and practice, it does. But we master this through the 4 weeks in our program. In addition to practicing, you must also believe that you have the inherent ability to acquire these skills, and everybody really does. The more that you practice, the more that you will notice things like nonverbal cues that maybe you would have been previously oblivious to. And when you're first practicing sensory acuity, it's best to start with maybe a small part of the conversation because it really, truly is easy to get overwhelmed. But do this looking at yourself in the mirror. This is an interesting exercise that we do go through and teach in the QMM program, is to have a conversation with yourself in the mirror and notice yourself. Do you move at certain points of the conversation? Are your eyes fluttering? Are you changing position? Anything like that. Then stop and see where you were in that conversation. And why did it affect you that way? And that's the first part of going down the rabbit hole to the limiting belief. Getting it, finding it, and reframing it. So let's talk about the NLP 5 fundamental areas. Number 1, breathing. The way that a person breathes actually speaks volumes about their state of mind in that moment. A change in the rate of breathing can often indicate a change in someone's mental state. When you begin to notice a variation in the rate of someone else's breathing, or even your own, try to observe from where the person is breathing. For instance, the next time that you're having a conversation with someone, try paying attention to whether they are breathing from the stomach or from the chest. And you will be able to detect a key difference in the tempo and pattern of the person's breathing. When someone is speaking, you should also notice a distinct change in his or her breathing style. So you should try to figure out what part of the conversation might have triggered this change you're feeling, even within yourself. Once you start to understand that breathing shifts when you are having a conversation with someone, you can then calibrate those shifts to their external state of mind. So to practice this, try observing someone's shoulders as you speak to them, as opposed to maybe just staring at them. By noticing the movement in the shoulders, you can then better understand any shifts in the breathing pattern, and this will also help you concentrate and observe the expressions on their face as well. And you can also practice these skills by observing the unique breathing patterns of even actors on television, as an example, by muting the volume and just simply watching their shoulders. And you can also observe the pulse rate of someone by looking at the artery in their neck or the pulse rate of the vein in their temple. It's quite interesting to start mastering this. Number 2, changes in color. The unconscious mind is more than capable of picking up on subtle color changes. You can consciously practice this skill by increasing your own color awareness, and start by seeing things in terms of contrast and noticing the differences in colors. For example, a person's face is not just one color, but a unique combination of colors comprised of different shades of pink, brown, cream, yellow, etc. The colors of the face will change during a conversation, and, of course, with different emotions. Once you start noticing these subtle changes, you can then indicate or include different emotions in the conversation and calibrate those emotions against the person's color responses. Number 3, minute muscle changes. The muscles of the face also change depending on emotion. For example, the facial muscles may get tense or relax according to their internal states. You can practice this by making a point to notice the small muscles near the jawline, around the mouth, and around the outer corner of the eye. When someone gets tense, the muscles in their forehead will get tense, and the muscles around the eyes will also be creased. To practice this, you can simply try predicting these characteristics in someone by initiating a topic that might be controversial to them, and then attuning to your interpretation to the muscle tones and emotions within the person. Over time, you will become adept to capturing these muscles and how they contract and relax. Let's talk about lower lip changes. This is a pretty common one. This technique can be tricky if it's not properly performed. You can get a lot of neurolinguistic information about a person's inner feelings by observing their lower lip, which is a bit difficult to control consciously. By observing the shape, color, size, texture, edges, stretching, and movement of the lips while someone is talking, you can learn to interpret the emotions behind the action. You can also start by observing the subtle changes and creating a map of the emotion with the state of the lower lip. By taking a mental picture of this association, you can then use it to calibrate the emotions and compare with other people as well. Number 5, voice sounds and tones. The tone of voice is probably the most significant cue that we have when it comes to nonverbal communication. An expert communicator is very well trained in understanding the sound quality of a person's voice and then picking up on minute tone variations. The sound and the tone of someone's voice are strong indications of their own internal state of mind. And you can start by practicing and listening to the voice pitch, volume, tempo, rhythm, resonance, and clarity. Watching television or listening to the radio is a really great place to actually start practicing. When doing so, it's not as important to comprehend the content of the topic as it is to recognize the shift in pitch and tone. Changes to these aspects will portray the internal image to the person. With increased practice and focus, you will be able to calibrate voice and tone effectively and get deeper insight into someone's mental world. Now let's finish our video with ways to increase your own sensory acuity. So these are just some very simple NLP group exercises that can be done to practice and master any sensory acuity skills. So in the first exercise, form a group of 4 people, and each person in the group will then narrate 4 stories about their life, and 3 of these stories will be true and 1 will be false. The narrator can place the false story in any order in the narration. Once the narration is over, the other group members then attempt to guess which of the 4 stories was false by interpreting the facial expressions and other sensory attributes. And participants can list the sensory cues for each person and calibrate them to their own emotions, and then have a discussion that takes place after completion. Exercise number 2. This exercise can be done with just 2 people. So the first person holds a dollar bill or any other currency at waist level. The second person cups their hand around the dollar bill without touching it. The second person's job is to try to catch and sense when the first person is ready to drop the bill. Every time the first person decides to drop the bill, he or she will give out a nonverbal cue through their unconscious movements, which the second person will try to read and interpret. Once the second person catches the dollar bill 3 times in a row, he or she will have calibrated the unconscious movements sent out by the first person and will give a description of its interpretation. So by observing the breathing patterns, color changes, lip movements, muscle configuration, and voice patterns as a whole, you can actually begin to get a much more accurate picture of someone's internal state of mind. To avoid being overwhelmed, though, try splitting your practice into smaller bits. And once you master one bit, you can move to the next one. And over time, and with a lot of dedicated practice and reading and interpreting the nonverbal signs, it's actually going to become quite normal and natural to you. So let's talk about sensory acuity, the vibes analogy. It's also a great way to remember these cues. And some of the things that you can notice are people's responses to voice, which includes tempo, volume, pitch and tone, modulation and timbre, and types of words used. Inclination. This is inclination of the spine, general posture and gesture. Notice whether someone is slumped or straight, leaning forwards, upright or back. Symmetrical, asymmetrical, to the left or right, range and speed gestures, and micro muscle movements. Breathing. Rate, depth, location in the body. Is it chest breathing versus maybe deep belly breathing? Eyes, the movements, pupil dilation, redness or watering, and direction. And skin, the color, muscle tone, size of the areas such as the lips, shiny or dull, or whether they have any goosebumps. So I hope you got something from this video. And again, it just connects you through to the QMM program and how we really place a focus within the program of helping you to overcome those limiting beliefs so that you can begin manifesting and utilizing manifestation with the maximum frequency within the body to attract to you exactly what you desire. Thank you for being here.